welcome everybody to the CRE Arena. Today we have a very special guest. Mr. Chris Ressa is on the call, and Chris is the COO of DLC Management. And Chris, you're overseeing a $2.5 billion portfolio. So, man, your time is extremely valuable, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be here on the show today.
Thank you. Happy to be here, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So before we get into this and how we, because I have a lot of questions on how you are overseeing this portfolio and running the operations of this firm. I mean, you have a stout social media following as well. So I want to get into all of that and really figure out how you're managing this and still have somewhat of a life outside of work. But before I do that, I would really just want to get the background story. How did you get where you are today?
So I grew up in a pretty blue collar town. It was a great town. I grew up in Byram, New Jersey. Went to Lenape Valley High School. It's kind of about 45, 50 minutes west of Manhattan, straight on Route 80, about 25 minutes east of the Pocono Mountains.
Okay.
And, it was a pretty tight-knit, small-town feel. Really everyone there had some strong blue-collar work ethic, gritty roots. So that was a good foundation. And I grew up playing sports. I was a wrestler, so I wrestled in college. I went to Rutgers, and the head wrestling coach there hooked me up with a guy who was the head of real estate or the director of real estate for the Eastern Division for Sherwin-Williams.
Okay.
And they were looking to bring on someone to train how to do corporate real estate from a tenant perspective. So that was my first job. And then after that, I was there for a short while, about a year and a half. And I realized I wanted to get onto the landlord side of the business. And I moseyed on my way over to learn on the developer, owner, landlord side.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I love that. And I wanted to talk about the wrestling here in a bit, but and to wrestle at Rutgers, that's awesome, man. That's top notch. So for you going into when you asked your coach, I mean, was it hey, do you know somebody in commercial real estate? Do you know somebody in real estate? Or hey, do you know how I can make a couple of dollars? What was that like?
I was applying to everything and anything at the time. Yeah. And he's like, this guy has a job here. I ended up, really liking the real estate portion. I was more passionate about that than I was the paint business. Mm-hmm. And Sherwin-Williams is a great company, paint company first, awesome company. But I fell in love with the real estate side and realized I wanted to mosey on my way over. But no, I had no preconceived notions that I would be in commercial real estate. I had no idea.
Yeah, and to skip the residential, I don't want to say shenanigans, but the residential game. I mean, most people, that's your first thought of real estate, is because you usually live in a house, an apartment, etc. So to skip that sounds like it was a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't in the residential game, and some people love it. Yeah. It felt like at the time that it was more like just getting a corporate job than I was getting a real estate job.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
When I took it, it wasn't really about the real estate. I was just on their real estate team.
Yeah. Okay. And then so from you being on the landlord side, has it always been with DLC? Has it always been in the retail realm? Where'd you start out on the landlord side, and then how'd you kind of get to where you are today?
I had one stop in between Sherwin-Williams and DLC called Ashkenazi Acquisitions. I was there for a short while, mm-hmm. But since about 2007, I've been at DLC, and we are primarily focused on open air retail. So no enclosed malls, but open air retail.
Okay. And then why is that? Why no enclosed malls? Why you just think that's not the way the world's going, or just preference, or what do you think?
I would say the enclosed mall world is a same industry, different business than the open air retail world.
Okay.
If you look at the institutional, public REIT landscape, most of them operate in many markets.
Yeah.
What they're very focused on is asset class, mm-hmm. right? There's very few REITs that are multi-strat asset class. Mm-hmm. they're either they own multifamily, they own industrial, they own hotel, they own um, retail, they own life science. Like they're very focused,
Yeah.
and so I think that's a a discussion. I think that's like just as important as owning your market is really owning your asset class and knowing your asset class. So the company had started as a retail company and went into that. And then in retail, there's, in other asset classes, there's like A, B, and C real estate. In retail, there's so many different avenues. There's enclosed malls, there's lifestyle centers, there's urban high street retail, there's power centers, grocery anchored centers, there's freestanding buildings, there are unanchored multi-tenant strips, and to play in all of those is challenging.
Yeah.
There's similarities, and so we focus on the larger format grocery and power centers. So power center being like, think of a Walmart with TJ Maxx, Dick's Sporting Goods,
Mm-hmm.
Old Navy, Starbucks out on a pad, things like that.
Right. No, I love that. So for you at DLC, when you got there, I mean, did you start off solely on the leasing side from the landlord side, and then how did
Yeah, I
you
was
work
on
your
the
way
leasing.
to COO?
I was on the leasing side, and then in 2018, I grew up through that. Basically spending a lot of time in retailer offices, and then I grew into a leadership position um, on the leasing side where I wasn't solely focused on deal making, really on tenant relationships as well as managing the team. And then I ended up moving into overseeing multiple disciplines on the what I'll call the property operations side, and that's our leasing, construction, property management, development arms, and marketing. And so anything that like touches the property, then we have a whole team that does our acquisitions, uh, dispositions, capital markets, and all that. And I don't do that day to day.
Yeah.
So I would tell you on the commercial space, my day to day is primarily people focused, probably more than real estate focused. And it's also tenant relationships. Over the last 90 days in the first quarter of this year, I was in a lot of national retailers' offices,
Mm-hmm.
meeting with them, understanding their growth plans, how's their business doing, how are we doing in their portfolio, what can we do more with, less about any individual deal.
Yeah.
And I would tell you, like for me, if I'm like labeling my expertise, there's I probably smarter on the understanding the retail side than I even am the commercial real estate side. I think I have a pretty good understanding of commercial real estate,
Yeah.
but I think one of the things where that separated me is I really have a good understanding of there's of our customer, who is the tenant, who is the retailers, and understanding their businesses and what's going on in retail, right? If you went on my LinkedIn in 2020, 2021, majority of it was the content was focused on retail, with like the subtopic being how does the real estate touch that. So
Yeah.
that's a little context.
No, I love that. And that was one of my next questions was for you in kind of your rise to the top, if you will, in order to get to the COO role, that's a big role. And for you to get there, what do you think for you, was it that like that retail knowledge and the relationships with your customers? Like, were you really good at that? Or was it, is it really good at managing people? I mean, I know you got to do,
I think I
everything
think
pretty
from
good.
I think from any leadership role, like the people side is the most important.
Yeah.
In building teams and leading teams, you can't do it all. If you can't get the most out of your teams, you're going to fail. And so I think in any industry, that's like the most important skill. Like you need to know whatever business you're in, whether you're in the consumer products business, you're in the transportation business, that's all true. But if you can't get the most out of your teams, you're going to probably not do well.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And for you, were you always kind of natural born leader? Is this something you learned through wrestling or sports, or like how do you
I think I had a lot of I think I had a lot of good coaches and mentors and teachers growing up, and I think that um, at some point in your career, uh, especially in commercial real estate, on the deal making side, you like either do bigger deals, sexier deals, more complicated deals, bigger dollar deals,
Yeah.
and that's how you want to spend your time, or you want to spend your time like growing and building teams. And there's two different lanes. Not one is better than the other. And I just chose to move and pivot into the people lane.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. So for you in your position now, like how many people roughly do you oversee in your operation?
So I, it is. I have like I have six direct reports, and then and they all have teams. So it's roughly in the 50s today.
Okay. And yeah, that was kind of my next question was direct reports. And so as far as managing, managing all those relationships, and so really you're focused on those five or six direct reports. And then I've been communicating with your executive assistant, which is she's very sharp and on top of things. So do they
Thank you.
funnel through her, or is it, or how does it work managing the five or six that then manage the other 40 or 50?
I would say a couple things. So I don't know from a time management perspective, uh, my assistant, really owns my calendar, right? So like scheduling meetings, we've all been on the emails where there's these, are you available at this time? And then Bobby says this time and Jennifer says this time, and it's back and forth and back and forth. And that, I learned that early on. That's like a really big time drain.
Yeah.
So I moved that responsibility over to her. So typically I would tell you, like, generally speaking, unless it's just something casual, if it's formal, that's the one thing they would reach out to Danielle on is like, hey, can I get, a half hour of Chris's time on Friday? And so that'll that'll run through her.
Yeah.
And then me and her use Microsoft To Do,
Hmm.
which tasks go on there. They get assigned to me or her, and we just check them off through To Do.
Hmm.
Um,
These
but I'm speaking daily, weekly to my direct reports, and I would say I'm connecting with the other folks semi regularly.
Yeah. Okay. No, and these are, forgive me, these are partially selfish questions at this point in time, but I think they provide value to the audience for those that are building teams and scaling. So, I mean, time management is huge, and like you said, you have Danielle as kind of a superpower there. But as far as that goes to working on projects, as far as projects and communicating as a team, do you guys have an internal software that you use? How do you, and are you in that software? Is that all Danielle? Like, how does project and deals continue to move forward, like internally in your organization, if you can say?
Uh, it depends on what type of project and what type of deal it is.
Okay.
So, um, I mean, we have a lot of, we have an acquisition pipeline meeting, we have an investment committee meeting, and deals get tracked and go through that. On the leasing side, we use Microsoft CRM.
Hmm.
So deals go into Microsoft CRM, and then um, they get approved, and everyone's in that system. Our legal team, our construction team. We have a deal with Starbucks. The deal will go in the system. Here's the rent. Here's the cost to build the building. This is the term of the lease. Do we want to move forward with that? And then once approved, Starbucks is approving it on their end in their real estate committee.
Hmm.
And then it goes to our legal team to get a lease out. After the lease goes out, it takes forever to get these big leases done.
Yeah.
The lease gets signed. Our construction team comes in. They start getting entitlements and permits and all that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. And I always, try to pick the brain of people that are really, managing a lot of people, a lot of activities and a lot of deals. How do you manage, the COO and overseeing operations of a $2.5 billion portfolio, the social media, the podcast, and then also like still having a life outside of work? Are you 100 hour a week type guy, or how do you manage this effectively?
You have a good team.
Yeah, there it
That's
is.
the answer.
There it is.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
If you try to do it, if you you can't scale without a good team, and you if you try to do it all yourself, you will lose. So it's that simple.
Yeah.
People want to make it more complicated than that. It's that simple. Like you mentioned the podcast. We put out an episode every week. I don't spend a lot of time. Everyone thinks I spend a lot of time in that. I don't spend a lot of time in the podcast.
Yeah.
My time is the 1 hour podcast. And a lot of the people, not all, but a lot of the people, it's super strategic. Like a lot of the people are retailers.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, pick your hot retailer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Dutch Brothers has a ton of locations. Well, they have 1,000. They're public. They're crushing it. I'm sorry, it's Dutch Bros, not Dutch Brothers. Dutch Bros. And so we haven't made a Dutch Bros deal yet, but they're running and gunning and doing all these deals. I want to get into that game and try to get in that game. Well, I could call him, send him a site plan, and try to get in and compete with everyone else. Mm-hmm. Or I can say, hey, you want to come on this podcast? And now I got an hour of his time. He tells me about him, his family. I tell him about me. And now I have a relationship in an hour. Now when I send him like a site plan and like opportunity, it's a lot easier than previously.
Yeah.
So I don't look at that as a time suck at all. That's pretty strategic on our end. Mm-hmm. And like I said, my only time is the conversation. Mm-hmm. And for that, I would have got on a plane and flew to California and met them to do that. So to be able to do that on a 1 hour podcast is actually super efficient.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, man. And that's been my favorite thing about this podcast is like everybody's busy, man. Everybody's so busy. And there's all these very interesting, fascinating people in the commercial real estate realm that are crushing it and doing awesome things like yourself. And it's like, when else would I get an hour to sit down and talk, face to face and get to learn about you, your story, what you have going on in your business, and just deepen that relationship at the same time, getting great content, providing value to the audience and doing all those things. So it is a productivity hack. I will say for sure. So for you getting into the social media realm, what was the original intent? Was the original intent to get on social media as like, hey, I want to be more strategic and efficient with relationships, or was it bigger, personal branding things? Or like, when did you get on social media and why?
I mean, I've been on social media since like 2005, but like, when did I start
MySpace
producing content? Yeah. When did I start producing content for business at scale was in 2017. Mm-hmm. And from like 2017 to like 2022, I was every day, multiple times a day, pretty scheduled out on that. And then in 2019, I wanted, and that was primarily on LinkedIn. And in commercial real estate, not just retail, I would say I was one of the first like 5 like consistently putting content. And so I scaled quickly because I was one of the first ones on LinkedIn, like really driving content in commercial real estate. And then in 2019, I was like, all right, what's going to be next? And I like dabbled in a few, and I realized for me, it was easy to write. And that's why LinkedIn was good. Producing content, I didn't want to like scale a team and build a team to produce video and this and that and social graphics. And that wasn't my cup of tea. I wasn't going to spend the time to do the social graphics and all that stuff. So naturally, that kind of led me to a podcast as like my second form of content that I went to. Mm-hmm. I would say in Q1 of 2024, I've spent less time on social media than I had in the past 5 years, and that'll probably ramp back up. I think I don't know that I'm late. I don't know that I've missed the opportunity, but the one place I should have pivoted to and scaled on was on X, because the commercial real estate conversations, in about 2022, I would say, got really robust on X. Mm-hmm. And it would have been easy for me to like work through and like get through all my LinkedIn content and repurpose that for Twitter, especially years of it. There's still a lot of stuff that's super relevant.
Yeah.
I hadn't spent the time on that. I think it's not on one of my goals, but it's kind of like a someday maybe for 2024 to do that. But I'm following. I'm not active in the discussion on X right now, and I'm pretty cognizant of how robust it is.
Yeah.
And I say that versus like TikTok, where it's very robust, because TikTok is not a media format that is going to lend itself for me. Whereas Twitter, I would say I miss there. Twitter does, because it's very text heavy, not very video, very social graphic heavy. And the amount of content through text that I have put out over 5 years on LinkedIn would have been really well served on that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a high level on my social media game and what's going on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the insight there, and yeah, that's one of the things about social media is like you said, for TikTok, is you like to think, what's the intent behind the platform? And we've done all sorts of things. We've dabbled, like in social media, we've dabbled in like paid ads and other things that we've done. So it's what's the intent of the consumer on social media? And I like to think that LinkedIn, and now probably Twitter some, or X, is people are going there to engage with other people, get insight, get educational purposes, things like that. Versus TikTok, it's just, I don't think people are going. I'm not on TikTok, but I don't believe people are going there to engage with other people. It's just kind of like, I don't say mindless scrolling, but it's just consuming, if you will, and not any back and forth education, relationship building. I guess there could be some educational type videos there, but the relationship building and engagement with other people, I don't know how heavy that is on the TikTok platforms, but not super educated on it. So,
I mean, I could go forever on this. I think I would disagree with you here.
okay, yeah, tell me.
Because whenever there's significant eyeballs
Yeah,
going to somewhere
yeah.
and getting attention, as well as TikTok is, there's an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I consciously said to myself that to gain that opportunity requires a time investment and a learning that I wasn't prepared to put in. Not because I didn't think it would have value.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I was all over TikTok, it would yield results.
Mm-hmm.
The reason one of the things that when it comes to personal branding marketing that I think is important is consistency wins, and the effort, time, and dollars to be consistent for me on LinkedIn and X is super low.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Compared to
Yeah.
TikTok and Instagram for me is much higher. Now for some people are like iPhone video wizards
Yeah.
and like PowerPoint ninjas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so those platforms are much better, and they don't like to write. And so they're much better than Twitter, X and LinkedIn. So for me, it was less of a function of the utility and value of the end consumer,
Mm-hmm.
because I think they're totally on TikTok, and
Yeah.
it's the opportunity is immense.
Yeah.
For me, it was more how the content's distributed and what type of media that is. And on TikTok, it's video.
Yeah.
And that for me is more time consuming, whereas LinkedIn and X is very simple because it's text based.
Yeah.
And things, I'm out on the road, I could make a X post or LinkedIn post like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that makes sense. And I've seen the numbers as far as like TikTok versus all different other forms of media. Like, they're smashing in forms of usage, and follow, not follower, like user growth and engagement, like as far as people engaging with the platform. The one question, and what I was meaning was, I don't know the level of engagement, like human to human engagement, versus like, hey, I'm posting this content, you consume it, and we never talk. So I think, and that's one thing that
I
like
mean,
I don't know.
so what I would say is like to that is your you're already predefining what the purpose of social media should be.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying, what I'm hearing is, if I can't get engagement in a person-to-person conversation, then my utility for social media is less. And I'm just saying, I think that's different. I don't think it's less.
Right. Yeah. It depends on what you're optimizing for.
Yeah,
Because if you're going for a relationship based business and to interact with people to do deals with, and like I said, I'm having this conversation, but also not on TikTok. We've posted things before, we've dabbled on there, but I'm speaking out of turn mostly because I'm not an active user on TikTok. This is from an
sure.
outsider looking in of what I can tell, but like I said, sort of speaking out of turn because I'm not in there and actively using it. But what I've seen on LinkedIn and Twitter or X has been like I see some real human to human connection going on there, but without a doubt, like the eyeballs that TikTok has is unreal.
So I just don't I, I don't make the presumption that it's better for me to use social media to build relationships and engage with people
Mhm.
versus market.
Yeah,
I think it's good for both,
yeah,
right? People spend millions of dollars on Super Bowl ads every year,
yeah, yeah.
and they're not engaging with anybody.
Right.
And to that end, if I could do it for free on TikTok, I won't get as many looks as the Super Bowl.
Yeah, yeah,
There's probably a way to figure out how to use that to your benefit.
yeah. No, for sure. And whatever you,
I just haven't. But the point I was making is, I didn't spend the time to do that because of the type of media format it is,
yeah,
not because I don't think that the end result could be beneficial.
yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. And like I said, I think it's all about what you optimize for. What type of engagement is it? That relationship building? Is it that in like, hey, the eyeballs there, or is it like, hey, this is what I like doing. I don't like writing. I don't like, it's I just want to post, TikTok dance videos or whatever it is. So it's like whatever suits your fancy, and that's what you want to do. Then by all means, like go do it. And I think optimizing for that, and like you said in your point on LinkedIn and X, that's probably most important because of the consistency component.
Yeah, because you're not going to be able to really optimize any platform if you're not consistent.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think optimizing for that first, as far as like, and I think that's a great tip. Is like, what do you like to do? Do you like to write? Do you like to shoot, quick videos? Do you like to long form explain things over videos? It might be YouTube. So yeah,
Right, it
consistency
might be
is
YouTube.
king.
Yeah.
So no, that's good, man. I'm glad we could hash that out and talk about the different platforms, and even like I said, even though like I don't use that platform, it's good to like beat it back and forth with guys like yourself to see how you perceive social media and the engagement and you like the act of doing it yourself. I think that's really valuable to like work out and talk about with other people. So I appreciated that. But want to switch gears here a little bit. I mean, with you getting into the business world and fresh from the sport of wrestling, I mean, I believe most people know how difficult wrestling is. Many probably don't, especially at a Rutgers level. But when did you start wrestling? And then when did you start wrestling? I'd love to hear the story of your wrestling career briefly, but then what are some of the traits that you took into business that you think have served you well?
Uh, so wrestling's, I owe a lot to the sport of wrestling.
Yeah.
So I started wrestling when I was 7,
Mm-hmm.
6 or 7.
Yeah.
I started wrestling year round when I was like 13. And so it is pretty interesting because the mental aspect of the sport is pretty impactful. The discipline, the hard work, the you're one on one with someone, the pressure
Yeah.
that comes with that. I wrestled in front of a lot of big crowds, both in high school. I came from a wrestling high school, and then in college, and it's super intense.
Yeah.
And as much as it's physical, it's so mental of a sport and emotional. And so I think one thing that, a couple of things. So one, I think a high tolerance to stress and high pressure situations. I
Yeah.
think, David Goggins said, the worse the conditions, the more I like my odds. I connect with that line a lot. I'm not comparing myself to David Goggins by any stretch of the imagination,
Yeah.
but I connect with that line a lot because, um, you know, in wrestling, there was always nothing was ever right, and you're it when everyone's feeling great and everything is lollipops and rainbows, you perform well.
Yeah.
It's really about when like things are not great, how do you do?
Yeah.
And so I think high tolerance for stress. I think just the ability to set a goal and strive for that goal, as simple as that is, the helped me tremendously in wrestling. I think the ability to, you know, I think discipline goes without question with wrestling, right? There was some certain discipline things had to do, um, and then learning how to push yourself. I one time I forget exactly, but I lost like 15 pounds in 16 hours. Not healthy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the fact that I could mentally push through that and do that um, taught me a lot about my boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, and so those things certainly help me in the business world.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. And so that last one, and I mean even the first one as well. So how would you say that's channeled into the work environment? Because like, you're never gonna wake up on a Monday and say, hey, we got to lose 15, 20 pounds by the end of this week to get this deal done. How do you take those lessons and like implement, or how do you see them play out? It might be a lot of like subconsciously what I've found, but how does that play out in a real business setting for yourself?
I mean, I've been in scenarios before in 2008 where like if we didn't get a deal done, we were going to get foreclosed on by the end of the week, right? Like so I think that's a pretty, you know, analogous scenario to like if I don't lose 15 pounds in 16 hours, I'm going to not make weight.
Yeah,
My team's going to have to forfeit, and that's going to be my weight class has to be a real problem.
yeah, yeah,
So I better get on the treadmill
yeah,
right now.
yeah. No, exactly. What weight class did you wrestle?
Oh man. So in college, my freshman year I was 157.
Okay.
My sophomore year I was 165. My junior year I was 165. My senior year, the one year I went to the NCAA tournament, I wrestled 184. So I would say my son is 5. I have him wrestling. I am going to do whatever it takes to avoid the cutting weight scenario
Yeah.
with my son. I think I have a good tangible dad moment to show him the best season I had in college was the one year I didn't cut any weight. So
Hmm.
we'll see if that translates.
Yeah.
Uh, but because it's actually, if you get into the sport and you really get competitive, it is challenging to stay away from not actually wanting to cut the weight to get to it.
Mhm.
And it's a fool's gambit like that. Because you're going down in a weight class, you're going to perform better. It's hogwash at the highest of levels.
Yeah.
On a lower level, there's some truth to it. But there was a lot of practices that I was focused on. Well, today I got to lose 4 pounds versus I got to get better at my double leg,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that held me back for sure.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And so for you, I love that, man. And yeah, I wrestled from when I was 5 to 10. And one of my biggest regrets in high school, I don't have many, but one of them is I was too cool to wrestle in high school. I was all football. I'm like, what am I going to do with wrestling? And it would have made me that much better of a football player. But also, I think I would have been pretty good because, like I said, I had a 5 year stint when I was younger, and the high school that I went to. I mean, we have a Hall of Fame wrestling coach there. Coach Danny Walker is the man, and he pestered me year after year. But I was just like stubborn and hard headed, dude. And I was too cool for
See,
it.
if you went to my high school, the cool kids wrestled.
So yeah, so that is, you know, more up north. That is the deal. But
Where are you from?
Central Florida, so right in between Tampa and Orlando. Florida's it's football, it's speed, I mean, got the helmet right there.
I played football in high school as well. I played football, baseball, wrestled, and then when I started wrestling year round, I stopped playing baseball but I played football all 4 years of high school.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a lot of fun, man, and same to you. It's like I have a lot of life lessons that I've taken from sports and now have in business, and I think it's awesome that you got your son in it. So my son has wrestled one season. He's 8 now, and he's wrestled one season. He's done jujitsu twice, and now he's doing flag football, and that's one of the things when other parents ask me, or I've tried to encourage people or dads to get their kids into wrestling, and jujitsu was the same thing. I mean, they really learn how to use their body. I think that's super important when you're young, and you know, figuring out rolling your hips. And I just don't think that baseball really does that for you, or any other sports. The work ethic, I think, but probably the biggest thing, which I love the most, is I call it controlled adversity. And for my kid, and I think that as adults, we know that adversity it makes you better in different areas. Once you're on the other side, you come out on the other side much better. So for my son to put him into wrestling, I think that controlled adversity, because he's going to go through some hard times, he's going to go through some difficult things. So I mean, I don't know if it's the same for you, as far as like you wanting your kids to be in those, like, hey, learn those hard lessons, face that adversity in a controlled environment. I think that's one thing I've seen my son benefit from, at least in the sport of wrestling.
So one of my favorite interview questions for people graduating college is, what is the biggest adversity you've faced? Nothing to do with school.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone who's in college could say, I had to study for some test.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's some people who haven't faced any adversity yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you know, it's like they're going to in the workplace, and it's an important thing to know about somebody.
Yeah. I'm writing that down. Adding it to my list of interview questions. That's a solid one. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, I really appreciate your time. Before we get out of here, is there anything, you know, coming up, anything that you're working on that you're excited about, any projects in the works, or what's coming up over the next 12 months or next couple of years maybe, that you want to tell the people more about, or just you're looking forward to?
So DLC raised a fund last year, and we are trying to buy about $600 million of deals a year over the next 3 years. So we're on a growth path. That's what I'd like to leave them at.
Yeah, I love it, man. And so open air retail, what markets? Every market?
I would say we're national in landscape. So
okay, well, that's great. Well, so if you have your retail deals, open air retail, find Chris on LinkedIn. Maybe X here soon.
Maybe X here soon, but not TikTok.
Not TikTok for either of us. So, Chris, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, and always leave a comment and let us know what you want to hear next time. Until then, peace.